Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Faisel Syed,
And I'm Dr. Dan McCarter.
and you're listening to Faisel Friends, where we believe access to primary care is a right, not a privilege.
Today, we're talking to Dr. Paulius Mui from VCU Shenandoah Family Medicine Residency about table rounds, making the right connections in healthcare. This conversation was recorded live at the AAFP National Conference. Let's dive right in.
Dr. Mui, so nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is the first time that we're doing a podcast like this from one of these conferences. And oftentimes we'll go out and we meet all these wonderful people who have their ideas with how we can transition away from this RVU-based healthcare delivery system to one that's based on improving health. And so we got to meet Dr. Mui yesterday in person, and it was great. We're actually looking forward to meeting you at the it was FMEC last year. But before we get into all of that, we'd love to get started off by talking about why is it that you pursued medicine? Why medicine?
So that's a really good question. My path to medicine has been pretty windy. Generally, I feel like I just took this approach that I wanted to try out all the other things that made me curious in life. And so before jumping into healthcare, I wanted to see what it felt like to drive a cab, so I did that in Boston. I was curious what it's like to find housing for people, so I did real estate. I worked in a lab like most pre-med students do, and that was interesting, but it didn't, give me as much joy as I was hoping. And I worked in restaurants. I loved being creative with food and cooking and all of that, but I just found that the colleagues that I met were not the kind of individuals that I think inspired me to challenge myself every day. And I really was encouraged by my mom, who was a nurse, to explore medicine. And so that eventually, I think I found my way into primary care because I worked at Harvard Center for Primary Care, and one of my bosses and mentors was Dr. Russ Phillips, who's really showed me how important primary care can be for populations, but also for individuals on a one-on-one, relationship basis over a lifetime. And so to me, that just was a natural transition to pick medicine. And, it wasn't guaranteed to get in, but I did. I chose VCU in Richmond, and I really loved my experience there. I was one of the first individuals in a new cohort for competency-based graduation. So we ended up graduating in 3 years, kind of an expedited process through med school. And part of that led me to my current residency program, the Shenandoah Valley Family Practice Residency in Front Royal, Virginia, and I'm in my final year there right now.
Wow, that is such an incredible story. I mean, I don't think I've ever met a doctor whose path included all these different things. I mean, helping finding housing for people as a realtor, working as a cab driver in Boston. I mean, this is really quite incredible. So you enjoy also cooking food and making meals? My goodness. I think about a lot of the work that we do in the full risk model. We have centers where patients, we have centers where over 90% of the patients rely on us for transportation services. So being able to provide transportation, especially for underserved populations, that's improving health by providing transportation. And just this week I had clinic, and we talked about a patient of mine who's actually we're actively treating with congestive heart failure, and the patient didn't know how to properly read the nutrition label. So I can see how, loosely, at least in my mind, I'm like, well, of course he went into primary care, and then having a mentor like Russ Phillips, who's a friend of ours and also someone who continues to inspire us as well with primary care and the primary care revolution. I mean, VCU is very lucky to have you.
Yeah, well, thanks. I think what excites me about primary care is that you get to be a super connector for your patient, right? Like you you are that one resource that someone can turn towards you when they don't know what to do, one, with their health, but what to do within the healthcare system that is so fragmented and Byzantine, and it's hard to navigate. And so I think all of the skills that I had in navigating other customer service lines in our society, that really comes together nicely for me to be able to deliver primary care in a way that, is about the patient that you're serving,
And we talked, you have such an exciting and innovative way of looking at things, how to make things better. So I know I got the opportunity to see your game that you invented, and how many people have gone through medical school and think about how insane it is to learn all this stuff, and you looked at that as an opportunity. What's the story about that? How did that come about?
Yeah, so, just the way that the doctor is not the only person taking care of the patient, same way that I was not the only one who created this game, right? It kind of was all done with a team of my friends, and the idea came about when I was studying for step one. It's really that time when you consolidate all the book knowledge and prepare to show off how good you are on an exam that's supposed to equate with your worth, which, I completely disagree with that concept, but that's the pressure we all feel under. And I just realized that medicine is a lot about making connections. So, a person comes in and they say they have cough and a rash. And so how do you connect cough and a rash within one person and one disease process? And so we pretty much, from that reasoning, try to identify concepts in medicine that have these lexicon densities that serve as nodes of many connections, and reread all the textbooks and we started out with thousands of concepts and narrowed it down to 280 cards across 5 different categories, everything from signs and symptoms to lab orders and the lab results and the disease processes, and then treatments. And then when you have these cards, they really serve as conversation pieces for you to teach each other and try to see how your colleague could see a connection between 2 concepts and you don't. And so that's where learning happens. And it's really a lot more reflective of the real world. And I think our current educational system really falls short of that, because we're forced to pick one correct answer from a multiple choice. And we're told the answer's in the back of the book, but in reality, there's a lot more uncertainty, and you struggle with that all the time. And patients don't care what's in the back of the book. They care what's in between the lines in the textbook. Yes. And to me, this game really was a response to a symptom of an educational system that is really came about because of historical inertia, and I don't think a really innovative way. I know whether it's a result of well-intended actions with unintended consequences, but we still have a system that I think creates individuals that just tend to be rewarded for memorizing things as opposed to truly thinking about issues that reflect how we handle patients and uncertainty.
Right. So, and I got a chance to, I know you weren't able to come last year because of COVID, but I got a chance to play the game with some other people in a workshop, and it reminded me a little bit of the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? You got to figure out how to make the connections from one card to the next, but you're right, the more times you run through those connections, the more lubricated they become, so that's pretty cool. So
yeah, absolutely. And I've never actually played the game that you just mentioned, but what I really think we created is that it's just the way with a regular card deck. You have 52 or 54 cards, and you can play poker, you can play solitaire, you can play blackjack. That's really what I've noticed happen with the game, is that we have this framework that really is based on internal medicine foundational concepts, and then I would explain someone basic rules of how to play it, and then someone else would say, well, you could actually play it like dominoes and use these cards with a different rule set, and then so it's almost you have an infinite way of, like, the number of games you could play is really limited by your imagination. And since you have these building blocks like Legos, and you can follow a recipe, or you can kind of create your own thing.